All right, everybody. So where we're going to be picking up is the very bottom of page 69. God alone can judge. But before we do that, because David was not here last week, Paige was holding the fort down with me. So David did not get to chime in on the sex conduct inventory. And I thought I'd give him the opportunity to share some of his perspective on that. So important, this inventory step. And so David can do sort of a recap slash his perspective, and then we'll get into new content. Go ahead,
Okay,
Dave.
thank you, David.
Mm.
I'm David. I'm a recovered alcoholic and drug addict. Yeah, so I got to listen back to David and Paige doing it, and I love those two guys. It's like so fun listening to Paige. She's on fire, and David and her work together so well. If you weren't here last week, check it out on our podcast that we post or at our website, and it's a lot of fun. So she comes from a different point of view, a different perspective, same result, right? I mean, that's what Bill's looking for us to do here. Have an open mind to what's in the black and white on the pages here. But if I go back to 68, right when we started about it, Bill, without pausing, without taking a breath, he's very blunt here, opens up this paragraph on the bottom of page 68 and paragraph 4 with one short sentence. Now about sex. Hello, Bill. Way to go, bro. Like, I love that he just drops that right in our laps. And then he talks about, I think he's doing it to grab the reader's attention. I think he does. He grabs my attention immediately about that. Probably, and he talks about we probably could stand an overhauling here. And David pointed out to me beforehand, Bill's talking about, perhaps we need a little help here in this area, and later in the next page over, we all have this problem. We all need an overhaul here. And this is not about the sexual act. A lot of times when I first got sober, I sponsored a lot of different people, and they came to me and they said, "Hey, I got all these sex problems, and I conquered a lot of women in my day, and I'm a womanizer, and I'm all these egotistical things they talk about." I go, dude, if you're going to tell me about all these women that you were with, I'm going to sit you down with my grandmother, and she'll listen to your fifth step, because that's not what this is about. This is not about that whatsoever. This is about personal relationships. And what I'm going to find out really a lot about this in this inventory here is I'm going to find out about how dishonest I really, really am. I think here more than any other of the other inventories of the resentments and the fears, I find out how dishonest I really am. And if we flip back over to page 69 in the first paragraph, and I'm going to wrap it up real quickly here so we can get on with the work. It says, we reviewed our own conduct over the years past. And, David and I use a 5-column worksheet on this inventory process, a review of our sex conduct. And that's in the second column. Who did I hurt? Bill points it out. And then the next thing says, where have we been selfish, dishonest, and inconsiderate? That is my first column. Where was I selfish in this relationship with whoever I was with? How was I dishonest, or how was I inconsiderate? We're going to have them discussions in step 5 when I'm sitting down with my sponsees. We're going to have those discussions about that. It's not a checkbox exercise. It's a checkbox exercise maybe for the moment, but we need to review this. Why? Because if sex is a problem in the past, it will be a problem in my future too. So just like in the second step, we came to believe that power greater ourselves can restore us to sanity. All those prejudices, all those old ideas about whatever I think God was, whatever those relationships are, how I take care of my finances, what I think meetings should look like, what a sponsorship should look like, all those things for me, they need to change. All those things. I got to open my mind to a new way of thinking. Let go of all my old ideas, prejudices, those preconceived thoughts, those preconceived opinion, whatever I think about this power greater than myself in my life. I got to open my mind to these things. Same thing is true here. And then it says, did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? So Bill's asking us questions here, and I need to answer these questions. Again, not a checkbox exercise. It's a matter of answering these questions in the relationship with, John Doe. Where was I? Did I arouse jealousy? Okay, how did I arouse jealousy? Suspicion. Did I cheated? I ran behind his back. I was dishonest with the funds. Whatever the case was. Bitterness. It's like, did I treat other people better than I treated my partner? I need to know these. I need to answer these questions. And next it says, where were we at fault? this is a really important question, even though the common laser, I need to know where my fault was here. Because if I don't know where my wrong is in the situation, again, Bill doesn't use the word part. And Bill doesn't use the word part for a really good reason. Because if you have a part, then I have a part. But I'm going to look at your part. I'm not going to look at my part. That's what I do best. And that's what I've always done. I've always done the first couple columns my whole entire life. I know exactly who I was angry at, my resentment list, what they did to me, and what it affected. But I can never see the truth in that I had some harms done. I caused some harms in those things. We're going to find out exactly how dishonest I am. And then what should we done instead? This is the growing process, the growing in effectiveness and understanding what God would have me be in a relationship today. And then we got this all down on paper and looked at it. Again, Bill's telling us this is a written inventory. 4-step is a written inventory. 10-step does not necessarily have to be a written inventory. Doesn't say it is in the book. It can be, doesn't have to be. 11th step inventory, the evening review is not a written inventory, but it can be. I'm not saying that it can't. But here's some of the things that I use in my experience when I go to meetings, when I'm in public, because I'm a salesperson and I'm in front of a lot of people all day long, office personnel, workers, management, upper management, lower management. I always, all day long, I'm spending time with men and women. The thing that I use as the device is if my wife was standing behind me, would I be flirting with that secretary, with that manager? Would I do them things? And the answer is absolutely not, unless I want one upside the head. So I'm not arousing jealousy in my marriage. I don't arouse suspicion in my marriage, and my wife has no bitterness in our marriage because I am behaving the way God intended me to behave today. So I'm going to wrap it up with this, other than the fact in the next paragraph, he says, in the middle of the paragraph, it says, this is our prayer. We ask God to mold our ideas and help us live up to them. I need that power. I need this power. I have to have intimate power with God today. Intimate power, because personal relationships like this are intimate. And I need to have an intimate relationship with God for me to have an intimate relationship with others. I have to respect my wife. I don't get to pout. I don't get to moan because I don't get the sleep with my wife that night. Don't do that stuff. It has to be an equal thought and process here. And then it says, remember always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised or loathed. So in other words, not to be rejected also, though, have to be thoughtful and conscious of other people. So I'm gonna wrap it up with that. Let me go to one more prayer in here, because this is the prayer in the bottom of the page 69, third paragraph. I apologize. Thought I was done. It says, middle of the paragraph, in meditation, this is our prayer. We ask God what we should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come, and please circle this in your book if you want it. God's the arbiter. Bill uses the word arbiter on the page 69 6 times. God is the arbiter here. So that's all I got there, David. If we want to continue on, we shall do that.
Cool. Okay, so very bottom paragraph, page 69. God alone can judge our sex situation. Counsel with persons is often desirable, but we let God be the final judge. We realize that some people are as fanatical about sex as others are loose. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice.
So as the definition for fanatical and hysterical, fanatical is defined as marked or motivated by an extreme, unreasoning enthusiasm or excessively enthusiastic about something. Hysterical is widely emotional.
Wildly emotional. Yeah, so I guess I'll just say a little bit here. David was wrapping up talking about being the arbiter, and that's not a job for we humans, right? And it's really echoed here. It's God alone can judge our sex situations. God's going to be that arbiter, and yet counsel with other persons is desirable. It's okay. We can talk some of these things out as it relates to our conduct and helping, to wrap our heads around that ideal. But God's going to be the final judge. Because remember, and I talked about this a fair amount last week, and it's echoed here as well. Some people are as fanatical about sex as others are loose. We talked about, no flavor for his fair and the straight pepper diet. There's a continuum of sexuality and promiscuity and all of these things. And it doesn't matter where we fall, the right place in that, we're going to sort out with God and only with God. Right? And it's going to come if I go about this thoroughly and honestly as I do the rest of my work. Right? Maybe the honesty is the tougher part of the sex conduct inventory as I think about it and let's talk about it out loud.
So, bottom of page 69, fourth paragraph, God alone can judge our sex situation. Again, another reference to arbiter. I didn't point him out on the page. And as David pointed out on the next page, we talk about God to be the final judge. That's another reference to being an arbiter. God is doing that for us. But at the bottom of page 69, the fourth column, the word counsel with persons is often desirable. What would that look like? Well, that would be my sponsor. Or that would be someone I give spiritual consent to. And if you haven't heard us talk about spiritual consent to me is this. Is I give you permission to call me on whatever you need to call me on, whatever my behavior looks like. Also that I share with you and it stays with you, doesn't go any farther than you. So in other words, like David and I give him spiritual consent. I give a couple of my sponsees spiritual consent to call me on my stuff. So when I do that, I don't get to debate it. I get to go home and pray about it, and I get to go home and consider it. So that's the counsel that I'm looking for here. Point out that I'm wrong, that I was flirtatious in a meeting, or maybe I was using foul language in a meeting, or I'm being egotistical in somewhere, some way. Those things get pointed out, and then I don't get to debate it. I don't even get to argue it. I get to go home and consider it, and I get to pray about it. And you know what I typically come back with? You are right. This needs to change. So this whole paragraph here, and this whole section of the book, when we're talking about our sex conduct, this is between God and myself. This is because I know I'm starting to know the right thing to do, right? But how about in the moment? How about in the moment, can I do the right thing on my own power? Well, it gives us a couple prayers there. That's why we pray in every situation it talks about here. And not just about sex, guys. It's about my behavior. It's about my sex conduct. It's about the way I treat other people today, right? That's why I bring God into all my equations. See how Bill's building to a crescendo here? How power is starting to flow in? Guys, by the time we get to page 76, we're going to have a dramatic writing change here because we're talking about some powerlessness here. But by the time we get to 76 and step 6 and 7, we're going to talk about power flowing in. We're going to be talking about having access, availability to this power in our lives here. It's a dramatic writing change that Bill comes up with for the rest of the entire book up to page 164. But for this moment, we are starting to practice prayer, practice meditation, and inviting God in.
So it says counsel with persons is often desirable. I just looked up counsel. Advice, especially that given formally. Right? As a verb, give advice to someone. Example, he was counseled by his supporters to return to Germany. I'm not sure what that's a reference to. Something political maybe. But the key is it's almost I can tell you better what counsel is not in this case than what counsel is. Counsel is not trying to justify my behaviors that I'm considering might be questionable to my sponsor or one of my running buddies. Well, I think this is okay because that's not up to the other person. That's between you and God. The other thing this is not is asking the person whom you're counseling with to play amateur psychologist. None of us are qualified to do that. And if the person with whom we're counseling happens to, as their vocation, as their profession, happens to be a therapist or a psychoanalyst, they do not get to wear that hat when wearing their recovery hat. We only wear one hat at a time. Okay. This is about sorting out, talking out, getting some clarity. It is not about judgment or discernment. That happens between us and God exclusively. Right. And we avoid hysterical thinking or advice. There you go. I can counsel, I can discuss, I can sort out, I can work out, but I ought not solicit nor take advice. Oh, and on the topic spiritual consent too, very powerful, very effective. And it's one thing, it's like so much, I can give someone spiritual consent, but that means I must take the feedback when it comes to me. And I can always tell when David hears me, he'll be going talking, and then he'll pause and I will give some feedback and he'll say, "Oh," every time. And he gets it because he wasn't expecting it and he heard it, and that's that. He doesn't debate it, and then oftentimes the next day, like you said, he'll come back to me like, "Yeah, I thought about what you said, and you were right, or hadn't thought about it that way, or et cetera." It's powerful, right? We can grant and give this to each other. Okay, first paragraph on 70, continuing on. Suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Does this mean we're going to get drunk? Some people tell us so. But this is only a half-truth. It depends on us and on our motives. If we're sorry for what we've done and have the honest desire to let God take us to better things, we believe we will be forgiven and will have learned our lesson. If we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to drink. We are not theorizing. These are facts out of our experience. Abby, anything? Oh,
Yeah, sorry. I do have ideal, which is, where'd it go? A standard of perfection or excellence.
Okay. So in that paragraph there, asks us a question. Suppose we fall short of the chosen idea and stumble. And then they ask us another question. Does this mean we're going to get drunk? Here's a warning. Some people tell us so, but this is only a half truth. It depends on us and our motives. What is my driving force here? What am I looking to get out of this right now? I got to be really clear on what I'm trying to pull off here. Am I trying to do something shady behind my wife's back? Trying to be cute with someone of the opposite sex or the same sex, depending on what my sexual orientation is? I have to be awake to this stuff. And then here's the condition. If we are sorry for what we have done and have the honest desire, I underline the honest desire, to let God take us to a better things, we believe we will be forgiven and will have learned our lesson. Again, a practice of inviting God in every situation. I'm a big proponent of sharing this with my sponsees, and I share this in any relationship that I'm in. Invite God in first. Open the door and let him go in first. Why wouldn't I do that? He's closer than my breath. Why would I exclude him when I have available to me this power in my life? I want to treat people the way I want to be treated. And I don't want people to be, I don't want to demean them. I want to be kind to them, but I don't need to be overbearing. I don't need to be forcing my ego on them, being cute with them. Again, if my wife was standing behind me, how would I behave? I don't do those things today. And then it says, let God take us better things. We believe we were forgiven. We have learned our lesson. If we are not sorry, here's another condition here, a negative promise. And our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to drink. We are not theorizing this. That is a real statement there, guys. These are facts out of our experience. We're talking about the first 100. This was their experience, that when they were not sorry, they drank again. That's what happened. When they didn't want to change things. Again, when the second step tells me they got to let go of my old ideas, this is what I got to let go of my old ideas too here. Whatever I think my personal relationship with other people are, I got to change those things. I got to invite God in here. We can't afford behaviors like of harming others anymore. I just can't do this. And that sentence there, if we're not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we're quite sure to drink. Another way to put that is, that's a death sentence for me. If I pick up a drink, and I won't be able to stop once I start, I am going to die from this. And how selfish is that? because right now my family is dependent upon me to provide for them and to have a relationship with my wife as we get older and retire someday, and to be a father to my grown-up children and my grandchildren today. So I must desperately need God in my life. I desperately need the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous in my life and the teaching, the practices of these steps in my life. So the selfishness and self-centeredness, that being the root of my troubles, can be taken away by a power greater than myself. And then I don't have to have these problems of sex relations or personal relations or sex harms. It just doesn't occur to me any longer because I invite God in always and often.
Yeah, I think I think what this sums up to me is that, I feel like I know a bunch of crusty old timers in meetings um that love to bust out, you're gonna drink, hey, you're gonna drink over any sort of questionable thing that comes up. And I have certainly appealed to some people that I've worked with, or that even if they weren't my sponsee, that, I've just am friendly with, and said, if this continues, you're going to drink, you're going to use. But I feel like that sort of feedback is based on patterns of behavior, right? If somebody, listen, we're not saints here. And especially as we're putting our lives back together and getting to God for the first time, we are going to screw up a lot. I mean, I certainly did. I sure as hell did. Right. And so I didn't hear, fortunately, a chorus of, hey man, you're gonna drink, hey man, you're gonna drink, each time that I got real about some of these things. But I did have some people give some feedback about some behaviors. One of the things that I did early on is I was white knuckling it, and I wasn't drinking and I wasn't drugging, but I hadn't gotten to God yet. I was running around with a bunch of women, right? Because I was seeking that sort of behavior with sex. And a couple guys said to me, hey man, get serious. Quit doing this. Otherwise you will drink and drug again. And I got real scared by that proposition. They saw a pattern of behavior that wasn't changing. And so I believe that's what's being talked about here. It says, if I screw up one time, it doesn't mean my life is over, that I'm immediately going to drink, or that I'm destined to drink. But what it does mean is, if I got through a scrape, then I better really be focusing on how to not make that happen again, which certainly damn right includes prayer. But God is not going to do for me what I can do for myself, or what I can participate in, right? If I have sex issues, I better not be running around hanging around with a bunch of women. I better not be in porn all day on the internet. I better be doing everything within my power, which is limited, but I got to chip in too, so that God can help me. Right? I can screw up, doesn't mean I have to screw up the same way again. Second paragraph on 70. To sum up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity, and for the strength to do the right thing. If sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves the harder into helping others. We think of their needs and work for them. This takes us out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious urge, when to yield would mean heartache.
So I have the definition for imperious and yield. Imperious meaning arrogant or domineering, and yield is to give up or to surrender. So in the sentence, it quiets the arrogant or domineering urge, when to give up would mean heartache.
Thank you, Abby.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so Bill's summing up sex here, and then he gives us direction. Absolutely. It's not a suggestion here. It's a direction. We earnestly pray for the right ideal. That's my prayer. For guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity, to know the truth from the false. When I am flirting with that other person, I am being dishonest, not only in my own relationship, but with that relationship. I'm also doing the same thing with that other person, because I'm leading them on to think there's going to be something more than this. It's dishonest. Or if I'm holding back and I'm not giving of myself under my relationship, it's still dishonest. I need to know the truth, sanity, to have clear thinking, for the strength to do the right thing. That's my prayer. Prayer to bring the right thought to my mind. Now that I can decide the right thing, I always know the call on God, and it says, if sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves harder into helping others. Well,
Mhm.
that sounds so familiar in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. David and I just got done doing a 12-step talk on spiritual cartel the other day, and we came out of chapter 7 in the book, working with others. And I'm going to relate that to what he's talking about here, throwing ourselves into others. And what does that look like? Well, in our big book, as we connect some dots, page 89, first paragraph, practical experience. Well, first of all, this experience is not a theory. It is absolutely an experience here. Shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics, one-on-one, intensive work. Think about Alcoholics Anonymous when it first started, when there's 2 meetings in the nation, one a week. That's it. How did those folks ever stay sober by only going 1 meeting a week? Are you kidding me? Well, page 89 tells me how they did that. They got the guy that was new come to the meeting, and they went to coffee with them. The meeting was on Tuesday, perhaps. And then Wednesday went to coffee and got with someone. And they did intensive work with that other alcoholic. And then on Wednesday, they got with another guy. And then on Thursday, and on Friday, and on Saturday. Because if I'm not being inconvenienced in Alcoholics Anonymous or Cocaine Anonymous or whatever anonymous you're in, I'm probably not doing enough. That's at least my experience. And my pleasure is working one-on-one with another alcoholic and drug addict and opening their eyes to the first step, first of all, and showing them that the first step is 2 parts, that I'm powerless over alcohol. That's a problem. But my real problem is my life is unmanageable. And they would debate that immediately. I know I did, until I was showed them in the book where it's at. And it's in the book from page 60 to 63. It's on page 52 in the Bedevilments. And when I started seeing those things, it's like, holy cow, that really is my problem. Because I always thought my alcoholism was in the bottle. It's not in the bottle. My alcoholism is an internal illness that I have spiritually, physically, and mentally. And it needs to be it needs to have an internal solution. And that's what the 12 steps are. Spiritual awakening has all of these steps. So if I do intensive work with another alcoholic, it gets me outside of me. Then I make better decisions. I do the right thing. And that's what they're telling us to do, to throw ourselves harder into helping others. And again, the measuring stick that I use is, if I'm not being inconvenienced, and if you want to look for 12 inconveniences in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, go to page 97. They're there. I don't know what Bill's fascination is with the number 12, other than the fact I think that when he wrote the 12 steps, he was very pleased because there was 12 disciples, and he thought 12 steps, 12 disciples. I think this is a good idea. But he has a fascination with it. And there's 12 inconveniences. And if I'm not being inconvenienced enough, I'm probably not doing enough work.
So to sum up about sex, the conclusion of these past couple pages, the first thing in the summary is we earnestly pray for the right ideal. Right? That's my main marching order coming out of this. I'm going to work out with God what's going to be acceptable behavior for me, somewhere between no flavor for his fare and the straight pepper diet, wherever it is in that spectrum. And I'm going to pray for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity. This is the same kind of sanity that's talked about in the second step as it relates to alcohol or other drugs, whatever we're powerless over. The sanity is my ability to differentiate the true from the false when presented with the situation, right? So it's saying, in a questionable situation, will I have sane thinking? Will I have wholeness of thinking about the possibility, the opportunity in front of me? And then will I have the strength to do the right thing? So I have a questionable situation. I'm able to pause and think about it, know the right from the wrong, and I may arrive at the right thing to do would be da 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 da. But then I've got to pray for the strength to then follow through on the right thing, instead of being like, well, I shouldn't do this, but just this one time, just this one last time, which is what typical addicts thinking, right? This is my last night. I won't drink tomorrow. or I'll start my diet tomorrow. I'm just going to eat the extra large pizza tonight, right? Whatever it may be. And if sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves the harder into helping others. Yeah. And David went to page 89. The more I am troubled with my stuff, then the more I am troubled with my stuff. The more I get out of me and help you, it's amazing how quickly those troubles of self get smashed down and resolved. Right? I don't have time to be sitting, woe was meing or walking the tightrope of judgment. I got to think about your needs and work for them. It means action, effort, inconvenience, like David talked about. And this does take me out of myself. That's the point. I can't sit in me. Everything about me sitting in self is a problem. It's going to smash down all those questionable situations. Because if I give in to them, it's as bad as a drink or a drug, because ultimately it's going to lead me to the drink or the drug. I cannot engage in these other dangerous behaviors that don't fit right with me and God.
Let me add just one little brief thing,
Please.
if you don't mind.
Yeah,
So,
please.
just to go back a couple paragraphs too, but the top of the paragraph David read, to sum up sex, we earnestly pray. So let me give you the definition of earnestly, because the way Bill uses it here, it means with sincere and intense conviction. That's the way I'm supposed to pray here. I don't know about anybody else, and this is just me. How many of you guys get on your knees in the morning? And I do every day. I take credit for that because that's what I've been doing for a long, long time. Run through my prayers, and all of a sudden I get off my knees and go, did I do the third step prayer? Did I do the 7-step prayer? I don't remember any of it. This is the pact that my sponsor and I have. If I drift through a prayer, I start all over again.
Mm-hmm.
And there's sometimes I've done the 10-step prayer 10 or 12 times. The third step prayer 10 or 12 times. Honestly,
totally.
I have. Yeah. Because I'm trying to connect to power. And whatever amount of time I spend with God in the morning, guess what? That's what I'm taking to my day. That much time. So if I got 5 minutes and now I got 23 hours and 55 minutes by myself, let's not forget the end of the day inventory, which is prayer and meditation. But the bottom line is, if I'm only 5 in the morning and 5 in the afterwards, that's what I take into my day. Now, I always pray and meditate at least twice a day. Always. I never miss, no matter what. But I also invite God in throughout my day. But I use this prayer earnestly, all my prayers earnestly, because I desperately need God. It's not because I think I'm going to drink or drug. We all can have permanent sobriety. Bill talks about it in the big book. That is my experience. That's David's experience here. But this is about living a life, our way of living. The first 100 and the way they live, way differently than I had lived with before. My life is continually getting better all the time. And when my life gets better, others people's lives around me also get better, because what is said here in that we throw ourselves harder into helping others. We think of their needs. Well, if we go back to page 20 of our book, if you want to hold your page right there and go to the top of page 20, this is our buddy Eddie, one of David's old sponsees, who's still sober and doing very well. Find a favorite paragraph, guys, for yourself. If you don't have one, this was his. He quoted it, but he lived it. Top of the page, first full sentence. Our very lives as ex-problem drinkers, that means recovered, depend upon a constant thought of others and how we may help meet their needs. Not my needs, your needs. That's connecting some more dots in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous here. That's what I'm looking for here. And then it says, this takes us out of ourselves. Boy, what a solution here, because back on page 60, when I was having a problem, you don't have to go, I'll go. I'll do it. Or page 62, first full paragraph, selfishness and self-centeredness. That we think is the root of our troubles. What? What do you mean? Well, we're driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity. We step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation. But we invariably find that sometime in the past, we have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. Next sentence, and I'll stop there. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. If I stop making my own troubles, I won't have these problems anymore. This is about really getting a relationship with power and inviting him in for the right thought and the right action. And what would you have me be? What would you have me be in that relationship?
Okay, bottom of 70 now. Second last paragraph, I suppose. Now we're going to be summing up everything we've been talking about in the 4-step inventory. If we have been thorough about our personal inventory, we have written down a lot. We have listed and analyzed our resentments. We have begun to comprehend their futility and their fatality. We've commenced to see their terrible destructiveness. We've begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men, even our enemies, for we look on them as sick people. We've listed the people we've hurt by our conduct and are willing to straighten out the past if we can.
I have the definitions for futility and fatality. Futility is uselessness or worthless. Fatality is deadliness or a fatal outcome, specifically a disaster ending in death. So in this sentence, I'm actually going to back it up one more because I
Please.
feel like it sets the scene. We have listed and analyzed our resentments. They have begun to comprehend their uselessness and their deadliness.
Thank you, Abby.
Oh, we skipped an important definition too when we went to page 20. Not that I was expecting you to jump in on it, Abby. I just, as I so frequently do, I'll pose this question to David. David, you read, our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depends upon our constant thought of others and how we may help meet their needs. How often is constant?
Well, let me give that a thought. Oh, always. That's what it is. Always.
Constant thought of others. Our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depends upon our non-stop, constant, continuous thought of others and how we may help meet their needs.
And we get a little aid if we get the 10th step. That'll give us our inventory to allow us to do that. So it's not like I have to try to pull that off on my own power. The 10th step disciplines will do that for me. As long as I stay in them all day long. So Bill's concluding, as David pointed out, our personal inventories. We've written down a lot. That's direction. Hopefully written down a lot. And then we've listed and analyzed. So written and analyzed, get down to the truth. Analyze it, get down to the truth there. Our resentments, and if you'd like, put in there after that, right in the page, in the margin there, fears and sex conduct. That's what we've done here, those inventories. And we began to comprehend futility and their fatality, as we got the definitions from Abby. We commenced to see their terrible destructiveness. Bill uses a lot of great words here. These things are going to kill me. It's absolutely going to kill me. So, and David pointed out some stuff before. It's like, so just because I'm not drinking and drugging, am I spiritually fit? And the way I realize that is, am I doing other things that is not spiritually fit? Like, in other words, and listen, I am guilty of these things in my past. I'm just not asleep dreaming I'm awake anymore. Overeating, gambling, pornography. You know, I've had sponsees come to me, is it wrong to look at pornography? Is it God's will for me? And I was like, I don't know what's God's will for you. God's will for me is not to do that. That's not God's will for me. And it's like, just because it's just substituting one addiction for another one there, for me anyways. And I just don't do those kind of things any longer. I don't have a gambling problem. I'm not a gambling addict, but I know the truth about myself. I'm a hard gambler, just like an alcoholic can be or a drinker can be a hard drinker, a moderate drinker, as the book points out. So I don't gamble. I just don't do it. I don't put myself in that position because I know the value of a dollar today too. And I know that it's not God's will for me to spend my family's money, because I also know that gambling is a losing proposition too, because I never walked away successful anyways. You know, I had that 1 out of 20 times. But the thing is like, I know the truth from the false. I'm living in the world of sanity today, the world of the spirit today, where alcohol for me can't coexist with insanity in the world of the spirit. We've begun to learn these are things that are going to come to me as a result of bringing God in. We've begun to learn tolerance, patience, goodwill towards all men. How are we going to do that? Well, it says if we're having trouble with sex troubles, throw ourselves harder into working with others. That's always the key. Always the key for me. Back to the text here. We've begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men, even our enemies. I can't think of anyone who's my enemy today. I can't think of an enemy I've had for a lot of 24 hours. You know why? Because I'm not causing troubles in my life anymore. I treat everybody the way I want to be treated, like everybody today. It just amazes me. Sometimes, do you guys ever have this out of body experience when you're talking to somebody and these magical words come out of your mouth, or you're very attentive to what they have to say? Like you're really interested in something that's not going to change your life by any means, but you're having this out of body experience going, oh my God. I mean, you're really doing a good job here. I mean, the words that are coming out of your mouth, I should write these things down. These are amazing, the stuff I'm coming up with there. The credit goes to a power greater than myself in my life today because I have a relationship with him. And I'm blown away that all I got to do is invite him in. And I'm not causing these harms any longer in my life. And then if I look at my enemies, if I think I do have some enemies and I'm not practicing tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward men, we look on them as sick people. We talked about that, especially the anger prayer early in the book too. We've listed the people we've hurt by our own conduct. Oh, next paragraph, I'm sorry. But so this is about compassion, love, humility, and forgiveness. This is a new way of living for me. Those got to be part of my vocabulary today. Not asleep, dreaming I'm awake.
So back on 65, under the little chart, when we were first writing the first three columns of the resentment inventory, it talks about nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. And we bring that up a lot as two really important directions or perhaps spiritual principles that guide us not only through the inventory process, but really all parts of recovery. So there's a lot of spiritual principles in this paragraph, and it starts off with one of those two, right? If we've been thorough. So if I did it all, if I've been exhaustingly consumed about this, if that's the case, I've written down a lot. Again, didn't make a list in my head, not sufficient. You got to write it down. And what have we done in this process? Well, we've listed and analyzed your resentments, fact finding and fact facing. Right? And what has the analysis shown us? Well, through this, we've begun to comprehend the futility, the uselessness, like Abby talked about, and the fatality. This stuff can kill us if it goes untreated. We've commenced to see their terrible destructiveness. That's some honesty. Right? If I can realize that, I'm truly being honest with myself. So we've got thoroughness. We've got honesty. Goes on to say, we've begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men. Remember in the fourth step, we talked a little bit, or not, excuse me, not in the fourth step, in the resentment inventory portion of the fourth step, it built us this little shift where he's taking us through the directions of how to write the inventory. And then he shifts to saying how we should have a new perspective on sick people and how we should treat them going forward. And so that's what's being called back to here. I'm learning that other people are as sick as I am, and therefore, how are they to be treated? Tolerantly and with patience and goodwill. Even our enemies, David talked about that. We look on everybody as sick people. This is the perspective. This is the map, the paradigm, the way of thinking that allows us to get out of resentment, is to understand that they're sick. Listed the people we've hurt by our conduct, right? That's the third inventory, the sex conduct, and are willing to straighten out the past if we can. Guys, there's so much. If I can get to this point, that I've written my four-step inventory, all three parts, resentments, fear, and sex harms, I'm being told here, I've already, not only have I listed out the past and understood it, but now I'm already taking on my new perspective about how I want to move forward. And it's connoting here, he's saying, at this point, I ought to be willing to straighten out the past if we can. This is 4. We're going to move on to 5 immediately, and then 6 and 7 and 8, where we're going to ask to be willing again. But Bill's saying that willingness to straighten things out, starting right here in 4, as I'm finding and facing these facts. In this book, you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. We hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. If you have already made a decision and an inventory of your grosser handicaps, you've made a good beginning. That being so, you have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself.
I do have grosser handicaps, grosser
Hmm.
being shameful and handicap being any disadvantage, which makes success more difficult. So the sentence, if you have already made a decision and an inventory of your shameful disadvantages, you have made a good beginning.
So this is not about my golf game, my grosser handicap.
Oh,
I couldn't resist. Sorry. Go ahead.
so
Dave.
bad.
Yeah, I
Okay.
know.
So back to the prior paragraph, though, it says we've listed the people we have hurt, okay, by our conduct. So just in case, I know Howard's not here tonight, Kathy's here, but because I go to their study on Sundays, I want you to know I pay attention. I really do. I write everything down because I'm a thief. I steal everything, but I put it into practical action, so that counts for something. Okay, so what we're talking about here, we look up the word hurt here, and we go to the 12 and 12. I'm gonna throw you a little sideways here, guys. In step 8 on page 80 to 81, stay with me if you would. You don't have to get your 12 and 12, or you can if you'd like. I'll give you a second to get to it. So a little story behind the 12 and 12 in the big book, and I've been telling this story way too often, so I think I'll stop telling it after tonight. When I first came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I was given 2 books. I was given the big book, a little thicker book than the 12 and 12, correct? And the thin book. No one told me which one to read. Which one do you think I chose to read? Pick the 12 and 12 every time, right? Yeah, Lynn knows. Yeah, I'm picking the 12 and 12. That seems simple. You know, that's a great commentary in there, but it's no directions on how to work the steps. So needed to read that big book until someone directed me to it, and I was 2 years sober by the time that happened. But anyway, so if we go to page 80 in step 8, and we go to the very last paragraph, and we skip the first couple lines, and then we go to define the word harm. You guys with me? In a practical way, we might call it the result of instincts in collision, which cause physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual damage to people. If our tempers are consistently bad, we arouse anger in others. If we lie or cheat or deprive others not only of their worldly goods, but of their emotional security and peace of mind, we really issue them an invitation to become contemptuous and vengeful. If our sex conduct is selfish, we may excite jealousy, misery, and strong desire to retaliate in kind. Such gross misbehavior is not by any means a full catalog of harms we do. Let us think of some of the subtler ones which can sometimes be quite as damaging. Suppose that in our family lives we happen to be miserly, miserly, thank you. Miserly, I knew that didn't make sense. Miserly, irresponsible, callous, or cold. Suppose that we were irritable, critical, impatient, humorless. Suppose we lavish attention upon one member of the family and neglect the others. What happens if we try to dominate the whole family, either by a rule of iron or by a constant outpouring of minute directions for just how their lives should be lived from hour to hour? What happens when we wallow in depression, self-pity, oozing from every pore, and inflict upon those about us such a roster of harms done others, the kind that make daily living with us practicing alcoholics difficult and often unbearable, could be extended almost indefinitely when we take such personality traits as these into shop, office, society of our fellows. They can do damage almost as extensive as that we have caused at home. One more very long run-on sentence. Bill loves those. Having carefully surveyed this whole area of human relations and having decided exactly what personality traits in us injured and disturb others, we can now commence to ransack memory of the people to whom we have given offense. So the reason why I read that is because I need to know what my harms really are. I need to know what I don't know if I think I'm saintly sometimes. But I mean, those are great descriptions. Again, what great commentary Bill has here on page 80 and 81. I mean, this is just another way to connect the dots, to reinforce where my wrongs are at, where my harms are, how I harmed other people. I'm awake to these things today because of the inventory process. We have 3 inventories, we have 4, we have 10, we have 11. But I do them with others today.
Hmm.
Oh, I didn't even talk about the paragraph we were in either, but go ahead, David.
I was like, where the hell are we? Okay.
Oh, we're somewhere else.
No, I think we're up to the last paragraph here, right?
And you read it, but I didn't even comment on it because I had my own agenda.
Well, we'll read it again. No,
Okay,
I didn't
please.
read it. Either way, here's where we're at.
You read
This
it.
is what I'm
Okay.
reading now, wherever we were.
Okay, thank you.
In this book, you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. We hope you're convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. If you've already made a decision in an inventory of your grosser handicaps, you have made a good beginning. That being so, you have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. And then I think you took us to the 12 and 12 based on those grosser handicaps, right? So go rant on, 2 more minutes.
Okay. So in this book, we read again and again that faith did for us what we cannot do for ourselves. I am not doing a 4-step inventory to start to know myself better. I'm doing this 4-step inventory to find out what I'm not. What I'm not. That's just another view of what I'm not. I need to know what I'm not. Am I a child of God? I am absolutely a child of God. But am I blocked from that power because of all these selfishness, resentment, and fear? Yeah. So I need to be rid of these things. And then it says, we hope you are convinced now, underline the word now, if you would please, that God can, and circle the word can, remove whatever self-will has blocked you from him. This is steps 5, 6, and 7 that we're talking about here. I don't remove my defects of characters. I don't even know the difference between my assets and my liabilities half the time. God does that for me. If you have already made a decision, step 3, and an inventory, step 4, of our grosser handicaps, the things that have been blocking me, things things I may hang on to in life that are going to send me back to the bottle. That being so, you have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. Again, I'm going to jump right into 5, 6, and 7 here. Another thing step 4 gets me ready for 5, and it gets me ready for 6, and it gets me ready for 7, and it gets me ready for 8, and it gets me ready for 9 and 10 and 11 and 12. So this is so important that I do an honest and thorough 4-step here. That's all I got. Thanks, David.
So in this book, you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. That is one of the central themes up to this point in the book, and Bill really starts to get into it in the latter part of the chapter, We Agnostics. And then from there on, as soon as he really introduces back on page 45, the lack of power is our dilemma. Really, it's the acquisition of power based on our relationship with God and how we build and maintain a relationship with God. It's really what we talk about from 44 on through 84, right? And then, so he's back selling a little bit more too here on the top of 7.1. Hope you're convinced, that God can remove whatever self-will's blocked you off from him. Because if I'm not convinced, I should back up and go back through some of these material to get convinced. But my experience personally of my own inventory and those of people that I've worked with, if I'm thorough and honest, I'm pretty convinced by the time I'm at this point. And David enumerated those steps about the decision, the inventory, the handicaps, but you skipped over. I can't believe you skipped over this, David. You made a good beginning.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So good job to this point. It's a good beginning. Remember in 3, our decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him is really our commitment to keep working the steps. So the first move forward after I make that commitment and that decision is to work on my 4th step. Yeah, it's the beginning. Just the beginning. I got to go. And David said we go through 5, 6, 7 quickly. He's right. 5 can be a lengthy process, and we've talked about this a little bit, and I'll say it again. We're going to get into 5 more, but 5 can take a lot of hours. I give everybody every minute they want. Get it all out. Because after it's all out, we're done with this. We're giving it to God. You gave it to me and you gave it to God. You're moving on. You're going to become a better person. And then 6 and 7, it's like 3 paragraphs in the book, guys. Right? The time to move from 4 into 8 and into 9, matter of a few days. Right? We keep getting these temporal references. Constant, immediately, now. And then this last sentence here, that being so, having made this beginning, that being so, you've swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. Man, oh man, this is why the 4th step is a celebration, because I get to see that guy that I was, who wasn't a great guy, but it's that guy that I don't have to be anymore. What a celebration to get to this point, and then to give it to God, and then to give it to my sponsor, and then be entirely ready to have God be rid of that. Oh, such a powerful milestone in my recovery. All right, end of the chapter. Perfect. Let me kill the recording.